Let's see. If it's working, it's working. If it's not, it's not. Drop modules, add new columns. Got it. Oh, cool. Okay, so now I'm definitely live. I gotta be. I just gotta be. Cool, cool. It's connected. Let me charge that baby up. So pretty much I'm going to be reading, trying to provide a very raw audiobook of The Well-Managed Healthcare Organization, 9th edition, by Kenneth R. White, John R. Griffith. Chapter 5. Foundations of Clinical Excellence. Critical actions. 1. Support evidence-based patient management guidelines to deliver patient care, assist care providers in establishing a complete, accurate diagnosis for each patient, maintain a library of electronically accessible, evidence-based patient management guidelines, promote interdisciplinary plans of care and case management for individualized, patient-centered care. Use functional protocols to ensure safe, effective, patient-centered, timely, efficient, and equitable. Or is it equitable? Care processes. Educate care providers to achieve uniform care and high reliability results using standard work. Integrate care processes across professional boundaries. Continuously improve clinical care. Support an individual plan of care for each patient. Measure and benchmark outcomes in effective care processes. Assist empowered care providers to identify opportunities and coordinate changes in care. Provide measures of clinical performance to identify opportunities for improvement. 4. Support an empowered culture of evidence-based medicine and evidence-based management. Organizing interprofessional care teams and clinical service lines. Maintain a transformational culture for decision, adaptation, and conflict resolution. Set a clinical excellence goal, support improvement teams, and reward improvement. 5. Strengthen population health. Expand and coordinate comprehensive ambulatory care. Develop coalitions to promote population health. Measure and improve the HCO's contribution to population health. Purpose. The first purpose of any HCO is excellence in healthcare. Specifically, the vision that should guide very interprofessional care team is to identify and meet each patient's healthcare needs, and to provide safe, effective, patient-centered, timely, efficient, and equitable care. Excellent HCO leadership supports care teams to make the vision reality, helping each care provider perform effectively, building teams that collaborate, providing the information and communication, integrating the efforts of multiple teams that most patients will need, and maintaining the environment of care. As of 2015, few HCOs has had come close to the vision. As Mark R. Chasen, MD, president of the Joint Commissions, put it, quality and safety problems in healthcare continue to routinely result in harm to patients. Desired progress will not be achieved unless substantial changes are made to the way in which quality improvement is conducted. The substantial changes to achieve the vision are well documented. Excellence requires skilled physicians and independent practitioners who can diagnose disease from symptoms and complaints, trained interprofessional care teams who can identify and respond to patients' needs, complete and timely health records, evidence-based patient care guidelines as a foundation for integrated care plans, functional guidelines and standard work that ensures uniform delivery of care, ongoing efforts to listen to patients and team empowerment to meet each patient's unique needs, and effective collaboration in and across teams. Any of these can fail, and any failure will prevent excellence. Perhaps the biggest challenge is creating an overall culture of high reliability where each and 7 elements not only happens routinely, but is integrated with the other 6. Many excellent HCOs extend their mission to a second, broader purpose, to improve population health, that is, to identify and meet the community's healthcare needs. Implementing the population health purpose requires excellence in care. It goes beyond to minimize unnecessary use of health services through collaborative efforts to promote health, prevent disease, and curtail unnecessary treatment. The HCOs are models for well-managed healthcare organizations, have a solid record of top quartile results. Their approach, transformational culture, and continuous improvement is the only document both path to high reliability. Building on their experiences, Chapter 5 explains that evidence-based model of 21st century care. Chapter 6 discusses the arrangement between the HCO and its care leaders, physicians, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and other care providers licensed to manage patient care and lead care teams. Chapter 7 describes the role of nursing. Chapter 8, the contribution of clinical support services such as imagining and pharmacy. Imagining? I was like, people get paid to imagine things? Imaging and pharmacy. And Chapter 9, the extension of excellence in care to population health. The following chapters on knowledge management, human resources, and environment of care are all essential to high reliability functions. Exhibit 5.1 describes 5 functions of an HCO's clinical organization that support excellence in care and also provide a foundation for population health. The following sections explore these functions in great depth, ensuring accurate diagnosis, providing excellent treatment that is safe, effective, patient-centered, timely, efficient, and equitable. I'm going to be memorizing that phrase by the end of this. Individualizing patient care planning and treatment, improving population health, and improving clinical performance. Ensuring diagnosis, the process of determining the nature of disease, drives all evidence-based medicine. The codification of disease, initiated by physician Thomas C. Needham in the 17th century and now implemented by the International Classification of Disease, version 10, provides foundations for all treatment. Identifying a correct and complete diagnosis is not simple. Doing so integrates information from the patient's reason for seeking healthcare, his history, a physical examination, and the results of diagnostic testing. It is ongoing and heuristic, heuristic pronunciation, heuristic pronounce. So,
heuristic.
Heuristic, what's it mean? Heuristic or heuristic technique is an approach to problem solving that uses a practical method or various shortcuts in order to produce solutions that may be optimal but are sufficient given a limited time frame or deadline. I like to be heuristic. It is ongoing and heuristic, that is, it systematically employs a trial and error mechanism that recognizes uncertainty and proceeds cyclically as more information is gathered. Exhibit 5.2 shows the major steps in the diagnostic process. Although Exhibit 5.2 is a useful conceptual model, most real care is substantially more complicated. Several additional considerations are critical to understanding the realities of modern patient care. Exhibit 5.2. Okay. Diagnosis is subject to improvement and refinement as more diagnostic information is obtained. Although the diagnosis becomes surer as the patient progresses, revisions to the plan of care remains possible. Actual care is more dynamically heuristic than the figure suggests. The primary care provider begins constructing the diagnosis when the patient walks in, and then she adds or rules out possibilities, almost multiple problems, and multiple diagnoses. The list of diagnoses is more often evolving than final. The different diagnoses introducing around the start of the 20th century lists the several possible diagnoses consistent with the patient's complaint and symptoms. The most likely first, further examination and testing rules out the less likely candidates. Those that remain identify in the appropriate plan of care. Nurse provides additional diagnoses that are often involved in reaching full recovery. Nurse's diagnosis follows a different logic and structure from medical diagnosis. It often addresses social, emotional, and attitudinal New word. Attitudinal. It's like related to someone's attitude. That's my guess.
Attitudinal.
Okay, I pronounced it right. Based on or expressive of personal attitudes or feelings. Attitudinal judgment. Interesting. Problems that complicate care and that must be solved to achieve excellence. Clinical support services provide diagnostic testing to confirm or rule out each of the listed diagnoses. Specialists perform and interpret these tests. They and the treatment specialist are available as consultants to the primary care team. Definitive treatment for serious disease often involves referral to treatment specialists such as the surgeon. This treatment specialist typically manage a specific diagnosis and returns care to the primary team, which the treatment is complete. Ongoing care of chronic illness is typically managed by the primary care team, often coordinating several specialists. For many patients, the diagnostic process is a team effort. Consultants, support services, and nurses collaborate to identify and address all the patient's care needs. The process meets the National Academy of Medicine, previously IOM, goals when the following milestones are achieved. No treatable diagnosis is overlooked. No diagnosis is treated that should have been ruled out. The nursing diagnosis addresses additional needs critical to recovery. The patient or patient's advocate is fully informed about the diagnosis and allowed to exercise control over treatment selection. All decisions are reached in a timely manner. All diagnosis tests are safe, effective, and efficient. All failures in diagnosis are costly. Some are very costly and a few short in life. High-performing HCOs use their clinical logistics and strategic support systems to reduce failures. Excellent HCOs reach high performance by relying on the following 4 steps. Empowerment for all care providers. Establishing a blame-free culture and ensuring that issues impairing each provider's best efforts are promptly corrected. Credentialing training and quality review to verify and increase care leaders' qualifications and improve performance. 3. Success as a great place to give care. Success as a great place to give care to recruit and retain well-qualified care providers. Steps 1 to 3 create a culture where care providers do their best. 4. Ongoing treating. I'm just realizing that this is totally in my face. Even worse. It's like right on top of my face. Alright. Better? Better. Number 4, ongoing learning and continuous improvement to improve skills. Process improvement teams become team efforts to reach benchmark by careful analysis and improvement of process. Provide excellent care. 3 major functions: using evidence-based guidelines for care planning, using functional protocols to standardize clinical and other work practices, and providing appropriate and continuous training and education of care providers are fundamental to safe, effective, patient-centered, timely, efficient, and equitable care. Patient management guidelines. Clinical activities are specific responses to patient stimuli. Identical patients should receive the same diagnosis at the same time, with every care activity delivered identically. Uniformity is achieved through patient management guidelines and functional protocols, though it does not preclude adjustment for patient differences. In fact, there are never been, nor will be, two identical patients, but the uniform guidelines and protocols provides foundation for the individualization of care. Patient management guides, also called pathways or simply guidelines, are now the standards of most care for most diseases. Guidelines present several advantages. First, they apply the professional consensus of best practice for treating a specific diagnosis. The consensus makes cooperation possible and is essential to sophisticated teamwork. Second, they provide the basis for a monitoring process. Many guidelines are recorded and can be tallied. Specific completion failures can be identified as opportunities for improvement. Third, guidelines are a convenient statement of contracts with patients and insurers. The court and the marketplace have reinforced the right of consumers to have their care conform to clinical standards developed by professionals. The use of guidelines have supported shorter inpatients and stay and improved survival rates, less expensive sites to care for, less expensive sites for care, such as rehabilitation hospital survival rates, less expensive sites, hospitals, same-day surgery problems, and palliative care options. Just needed to check something. Patient management guidelines are classified by diagnosis, but also by symptom or condition, such as chest pain or pregnancy. They are organized around episodes of patient care, such as preventive, inpatient, or continuing care. They specify the components of care, expect outcomes, and procedural quality measures. Guidelines are usually developed by multidisciplinary teams and written to easily communicate among the interprofessional care teams. Patient management guidelines improve individual care provider performance in 5 ways. The guideline is supported by training and become habitual as a starting point for similar patients. Several professionals can use it to anticipate and coordinate care events. Care providers can use it as shorthand or an outline to guide their decisions and their communications to others. The guideline forms the foundation for the interdisciplinary plan of care, IPOC, developed for each patient. Team members modify the guideline to meet individual patients' needs. The IPOC improves communication by highlighting the patient's expectations to the guideline. The guideline defines process measures of performance and incorporates information collection that can be used for its evaluation and improvement. The individualized plans also contribute information for guidelines. Guideline revision. Several hundred conditions now have nationally promulgated guidelines that serve as a basis for local review and implementation. Many conditions have several published guidelines. Well-managed inpatient HCOs have guidelines to place for several dozens of their most common conditions. The guidelines were contributed by a medical specialty association, relevant professional society, public or private organization, government agency at the federal, state, or local level, or healthcare organization or plan. Listed guidelines must be based on a systematic review of evidence, as demonstrated by documentation of specific requirements and an assessment of benefits and harms of treatment and alternative options, and they must be in English. However, due to budget cuts during the Trump administration, the future of NGC is unclear. The Institution of Clinical Systems Improvement has also developed published guidelines since 1993. One of their guidelines is shown in Exhibit 5.3. No guideline should ever be implemented without careful review of the implications of using it in a specific HCO. The review should be undertaken by a PIT representing all potential users. Guidelines following stepwise therapy should meet ethical standards to protect the patient. The PIT should explore all ramifications of the guideline, including local trails as necessary. The development process encourages learning, promotes discussion of the debatable issues, and builds consensus. It pilot tests the proposed guidelines against current practice and identify supply, equipment, and training needs. Guidelines must be reviewed regularly to identify changes in the evidence for specific practices. The local PIT is reassembled periodically to consider these changes. Functional protocols. Functional protocols are also called standard work, are step-by-step procedures for specific components of care, ranging from the simplest, like hand washing, to complex and dangerous treatments like surgery and cancer therapy. Excuse me. Exhibit 5.4 is an example of functional protocol. Excellent HCOs maintain large numbers of functional protocols supporting web access for easy reference. Functional protocols are major contributors to patient safety. Many patients' care failures, from falls to infections to wrong site surgery to drug error, can be traced back to absent, incomplete, inaccurate, or overlooked steps in the work process. These failures cause tens of thousands of undesirable outcomes each year. Functional protocols prevent these failures through several different mechanisms. Eliminating unnecessary or redundant steps. Preventing omissions and promoting safety. Alerting for tasks that might be overlooked or omitted. Improving patients' reactions by identifying signs or symptoms of unsuccessful response. Standardizing supplies with savings through lower prices, inventory, and training costs. Scheduling or sequencing or to reduce errors or delay. Substituting lower cost personnel for specific activities. Re-engineering the care process. A revised protocol may combine and revise several earlier versions, requiring substantial investment but improving care overall. Eliminating unnecessary procedures by making the indications or authorizations more restrictive. And diagnostic texts can require failure of less costly alternatives prior to approval or formal second opinion. Computerized order entry and medication reconciliation systems are examples of procedure improvements in drug administration. The new systems have better alerts to guard against prescribing the wrong drug, administering the wrong dose, or recording the dose incorrectly. The result is both low cost and higher quality. Good functional protocols have the following 7 components. 1. Authorization. Statement of who may order the procedure. Indication. Statement clarifying clinical conditions that are appropriate to use a protocol. Contradictions? The contradictions? But, of trains? Contradictions. I swear, if this is how they spell contradictions, I'll be mad.
It's pronounced as contraindication. Contraindication. A
Contra.
possible reason for not giving someone a particular drug or medical treatment.
Contraindication. 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 Okay. Contraindications. Conditions where the procedure must be modified, replaced, or avoided. Required supplies, equipment, and conditions. All special requirements of how they will be met. Actions. Clear, step-by-step statements of what must be done. Recording. Instructions for recording the procedure and observation of patients' reactions. Follow-up. Subsequent actions including checkups of the patient's responses, measures effectiveness, indications of repeating the procedures, and disposal or cleanup of supplies. Professionals must directly involve usually established the functional protocol based on the best and most recent evidence. Modification may be necessary to accommodate the equipment and facilities or the patient population of a specific HCO. In many cases, the professional involved can apply the protocol without assistance. A PIT may be required to resolve interactions with other providers and care support teams. Sets of interrelated functional protocols may have become more commonplace. Surgical care provides several examples. Preoperative care uses protocols to obtain informed consent, instruct the patient, obtain final diagnosis values from lab and imaging studies, complete the pre-anesthesia examination, and administer proper preoperative medications to perform surgery without delay. Each activity must be orchestrated to occur at the earliest possible time and in proper order. The preoperative care process requires advanced agreement on the task and their orders among several clinical support and medical professions. Many of these agreements are independent of the patient's specific disease. They become components of the patient's management guidelines for several hundred surgical procedures. The flow process design of Exhibit 5.4 is popular in guidelines and protocols because it shows the subsequent sequence and conditional relationships of each step. The protocols are web-based and accessible. Reference to the flow process is superior to memory. Refinements detailing activity by the calendar or day of stay, for example, are also used. Checklists. Checklists are functional protocols focused on patients rather than procedures. A checklist is used in the surgical time out to verify several critical elements, such as the identity of the patient, nature of the surgery, and any relevant additional conditions. A checklist for hospitalized general medical patients, directing the team's attention to pneumococcal immunization, pressure ulcers, bed sores, catheter-associated urinary tract infections, and deep venous thrombosis was associated with significantly increased documentation and adherence to care process for these conditions. I'm gonna, I need something to mark off this area. Alright. Care provider selection and training. The HCO must have credential processing to ensure care provider competence, knowledge, and skill by formal education experience, as well as proficiency monitoring process, evidence that clinician applies the knowledge and skills appropriately. Credentialing validates the professional's training and previous experience, and concludes to check for criminal behavior and seeks evidence of success in earlier professional work. Credentialing must be repeated to ensure continued competence and proficiency. Guidelines change as new treatment modalities and new technology are developed for beginning professional care providers and non-professional clinical workers. Substantial in-house training programs may be required with a phased-in approach to delivering care independently. Care team professionals must receive refresher courses and updated education on new and established guidelines. For many care providers, this is accomplished with an in-house continuing education program. Specialists are usually required to maintain certification, which usually requires continuing education from designated programs. Electronic access to guidelines, protocols, and patient data. Excellence requires that all care providers have two kinds of knowledge: understanding of patients' current needs and understanding of the clinically indicated responses. The first is now supported by the electronic health record. The record provides a history for evaluating the patient's current condition and instantaneous communication to all team members. The second is now supported by electronic access to guidelines and protocols. Electronic access supports telemedicine, a capability that is increasingly important in small HCOs and multi-site HCO systems. Excellent care requires an array of specialist consultation. Telemedicine and referral linkages are making remote consultation more practical, extending service in rural areas. Audio, video, and access to diagnostic testing and imaging enhance the interchange in remote specialists. Improved patient outcomes have been documented. Formal affiliation with larger centers are superior to individual patient referrals. They establish sharing in expensive resources like magnetic resonance imaging, support for measured performance and annual goal setting, educational services and advice on guidelines, learning from unexpected events. Chapter 2 noted the importance of reporting systems for unexpected events, including clinical errors and misadventures, accidents, near accidents, property losses, and any other situation in which reality fell short of the expectation of patients, guests, and associates. The reports generate a substantial file that is an important resource for continuous improvement. Each incident must be evaluated. Often additional information must be collected. The reports create a valuable statistical record revealing when, where, and how unfortunate results occur and provide OFIs to reduce the incidents. For serious events, a team must establish the HCO's appropriate response to the individuals involved. Many event reports summarize service recovery, a technique in which the response is begun at the time of the event. Clinical unexpected events are pursued further. Reporting near misses of serious events is encouraged. These are more frequent than actual events and provide insight into preventative opportunities. Individual events are calculated to establish the patient harm and HCO appropriate liability. Individual events causing serious or potentially serious clinical consequences are studied to improve guidelines and prevent recurrence. 4. Frequently occurring similar events or pursued as OFIs using PITs to improve guidelines. 5. Appropriate communication and resolution. Procedures are followed, identifying contributions, causes as OFIs, and providing appropriate compensation to the patient. 6. HCO is prepared to vigorously defend its position in the event that injured party chooses legal action. These 6 steps, now common in many leading HCOs, have essentially eliminated the malpractice crisis for HCOs that implement them. They have also reduced patient injuries and provided a faster, less expensive path to resolving those that still occur. Patients do not lose their right to trial, but most injured parties accept an immediate settlement that approximates they would receive in court after deduction of attorney fees. The HCOs save attorney's fees and court costs. Okay, give me just a moment because I need to make a note. Very important to note about what pages to utilize because this thing keeps slipping from work. Let's see. Excuse me, pardon me. This one. I'll put reference page 150 to 151. Okay. Back to it. To encourage the reporting and analysis of unexpected events and medical errors, the Patient Safety and Quality Improvement Acts of 2005, PSQIA, established a voluntary reporting system to enhance the data available to assess and resolve patient safety and healthcare quality issues. PSQIA provides a federal privilege and confidentiality protection for patient safety information, imposes civil money penalties for violation of patient safety confidentiality, and also authorizes the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality to list patient safety organization PSOs. PSOs are the external experts that collect and review patient safety information. Individualized patient care planning and treatment. Individualized planning and treatment are basic functions that support excellence in care and may involve tailoring a standardized plan of care to support patient needs. Care providers are obligated to monitoring the patient's progress and to modify the guidelines to fit the patient's needs. As Exhibit 5.2 shows, when the evidence behind a guideline step is not conclusive, patient-centered care and the ethical principle of patient autonomy on which it is based become critical. For example, the diagnosis of localized, low-risk prostate cancer, there is an array of treatment options and a lack of evidence that any of the treatment choices is superior. However, the costs are widely variable, as shown in Exhibit 5.5. The patient will choose, providing him with comprehensive and accurate advice is clearly critical to achieving both patient-centered care and efficiency. Over time, comparative effectiveness research will improve our understanding of prostate cancer. There will always be frontier scientific knowledge, which counseling will make important differences in both patient satisfaction and the total cost of care for a community. The IPOC is a process that includes patient, family, and all clinical disciplines relevant to the diagnosis. It should begin at entry and extend through the entire care episode of the next level of care. The IPOC identifies every patient's individual needs to make sure the care will meet them. Nursing diagnosis is often critical. It addresses the interaction of the patient living environment with her disease. The IPOC is a foundation for care management in case of exceptional complexity. An IPOC in general initiated by a nurse, beginning with the relevant guidelines and developed in the collaboration with other members of the care team. It includes input from the patient and family. The care team develops goals for the episodes of care and across the trajectory of the illness or condition. The IPOC addresses psychosocial, and spiritual support, educational needs, and cultural and linguistic needs, home environment, community resources, and post-discharge planning. The IPOC forms the basis for coordinating multiple therapeutic services and the surgical or other invasive interventions, intensive care, pharmaceutical, and rehabilitation therapies. A good IPOC addresses all the following elements. Assessment. 1. Assessment. Comprehensive review of the patient's diagnosis, disabilities, and needs, and identification of any unique risks. 2. Treatment goals. Statement of clinical goals such as the elimination of congestive heart failure, and function goals such as restore ability to dress and feed itself. 3. Component activities. A list often selected from relevant care guidelines and functional protocols of procedures desired for the patient. 4. Recording. A formal routine for recording what was done and reporting to others caring for the patient. 5. Measures of progress and a time schedule for improvement. Measures of improvement for as many goals as possible. 6. Danger signals and contraindications. Specific evidence indicating a need to reconsider the plan. The IPOC supports both the patient management guidelines and the case management approach to improvement. 3 critical aspects are the communication about the patient's progress and the attending physician and other care providers. Case management. Some patients will have exceptionally complex care needs that will require formalizing a comprehensive clinical strategy. Case management uses expanded IPOCs for complex problems such as multiple concurrent conditions and expensive chronic disease such as end-stage heart failure and multiple sclerosis. Care of these patients is usually long-term and often goes beyond medical assistance. Emotional support is often an issue. Family and community contributions are important, and special equipment and facilities are often necessary. In the most complex cases, the care plan may be written, consensus, professional viewpoints, closely monitored to gain the best possible results while minimizing costs. Although case management is routinely for very complex long-term conditions, it is not routinely necessary. The evidence does not show the case management reduces overall care cost, improve community health, and overall population health strategy must address not only excellence in the personal care but also disease prevention and health promotion. The issue is central to the control of cost of healthcare. Prevention. Prevention is generally considered to be direct intervention to avoid or reduce disease or disability. Many preventative activities are focused on individuals such as immunizations and encouragement of healthy lifestyles. But much prevention involves community-wide activities such as ensuring pure water, limiting crime, enacting legislation on firearms, and dangerous substance. Population health includes all activities to change patient and customer behavior. It is undertaken by care providers and by civic agencies such as public health departments, education systems, and voluntary associations. It has become an important topic for employers. HCOs provide prevention and population health for reasons. The moral commitment of all care professions is to health clearly, including prevention. 2. Prevention opportunities arise from the same scientific knowledge as treatment opportunities. The NGC includes more than 850 guidelines referencing prevention. 3. Healthcare professionals are respected authority figures in their evidence and given at any time with the patient is receptive. Prevention helps communities that own HCOs. Each episode of illness preventing translates eventually to reduction in cost of care. A healthier community has more workers and lower health insurance costs, make it a better place to build or expand business. Ironically, disease prevention reduces hospital and physician revenues. Well-managed institutions do it anyway. It is probably essential to avoid bankrupting the major healthcare financing programs. Preventing can be categorized as primary, secondary, or tertiary, and health promotions tools can be used to change behavior on all 3 levels. Primary prevention activities are those that place before the disease arise to eliminate or reduce its occurrence. Immunizations, use of seatbelts and condoms, sewage treatment, and restrictions on alcohol sales are examples. Secondary prevention reduces the consequences of disease, often by early detection and treatment. Self-examination for cancer, routine dental inspections, mammography, mammograms, I know that, screenings, colonoscopies, and management of chronic diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, and asthma are examples. Tertiary prevention is the avoidance of complications or sequelae. That word reminds me of soliloquy. My goodness. Let's do... Where is the word that I'm looking for? Sequelae.
Sequelae.
Sequelae. That sounds like a very fun name. A pathological condition resulting from a prior disease, injury, or attack. As an example, a sequelae of polio. Verbatim from... I get it. Early physical therapy for strokes, retaining in activities of daily living after injury, and respite services to help family caregivers, for example, by caregivers and the patients themselves. Patient management guidelines and functional protocols. And patient management guidelines and functional protocols should incorporate prevention and health promotion. For example, functional protocols for injections, surgical interventions, and other treatments prevent both hospital-acquired infections and injury to care providers. Home care visits protocol include inspections for hazards and discussion of patient needs and symptoms with family members. Diabetic and cardiovascular care guidelines include selection of the optimal pharmacological treatment and guidance to the patient in lifestyle and nutrition. Prenatal, postnatal, and child care guidelines include immunization checks for potential development disabilities, and education for the mother or child development. Nutrition, home safety, and domestic violence. HCOs with a community health mission extend to their efforts to the broader initiatives to minimize disease and its impact. The Affordable Care Act stimulated transition to community health missions. Chapter 9 addressed the distinction of its implications as well as strategies for improving population health. Improve clinical performance. Improvement is a vital element of excellence care. To monitor progress, each service line has specific performance measures, benchmarks, and negotiated goals, and OFIs for team performance, with detail distributed to each of its operating units. It uses PIT to pursue the OFIs, and keep the guidelines updated. Transformational culture supports a working environment where the following become true and are believed by most associates. Recruitment emphasizes the mission of the organization so that it attracts care providers and employees who are committed to excellence. Transformational culture encourages individual judgment to identify unique patient needs and unusual circumstances. It rewards informal consultation and collaboration to provide individualized care. All workers and managers understand the importance of respect for each individual's contribution, open exchange of information, cooperation, and prompt response to questions. Compliance with cultural expectations is accepted as essential. Interprofessional participation in the development of the clinical goals is widespread. Climate is blame-free. It encourages change while reassuring associates of their personal security, while it provides consistent procedures and processes, well-understood avenues for comment with prompt, sensitive response, and the recognition of the importance of dissent. Warnings and measured sanctions are promptly applied. For example, the penalty for incomplete medical records, usually temporary loss of privileges, is automated and routine because of the warning it is rarely applied. Stronger sanctions are used reluctantly but predictably in the case of repeated unjustifiable practice. Fulfilling the list creates a culture of high reliability or of continually learning healthcare. As discussed in Chapter 2, senior leaders establish an organizational culture of quality and effect and safety and focus priorities on clinical performance and quality outcomes. Clinical leaders integrate quality and safety principles into workplace, modeling quality principles in their interactions with staff, patients, and guests by rounding regularly. Clinical improvement is ongoing in the environment. Guidelines change as research provides improved clinical solutions. PITs continuously review functional protocols, updating them to incorporate guideline changes. Broad participation and incorporation in web resources ensure that all associates stay current. Training programs are modified for newcomers. People, building an engaged workforce. In the daily care of patients, interprofessional care teams tend to be small and transient. They change as the attending physicians, hospitalists, nurses, and pharmacy and therapy professionals change. The teams huddle frequent to resolve questions and coordinate care. They are drawn from larger and more permanent accountability units that participate in continuous improvement, goal setting, performance and measurement, and reward activities. Widespread acceptance of the transformational culture is essential to success. It systematically builds a cadre of like-minded, engaged care providers who help one another achieve excellence, in which team expectations help individuals. The pursuit of excellence becomes a routine and rewarding part of life. Clinical unit leaders play a critical role in supporting the culture of clinical excellence. They must be trained in transformational leadership and understanding the performance measures and in continuous improvement process. Much of the training is ongoing, but several hours of classes and formal system assistance, mentoring, and reviewing are important for newcomers. Okay, let's put a pause on that. Got to drink some water. All right, back to it. Organizing clinical units. Clinical units are organized by grouping patients with similar needs. Service lines. The large clinical units generally parallel major clinical specialties. Smaller units are also built around clinical similarity, creating work teams and that become skilled in specialized care. The complexities of excellent care are such that many HCO use specialized internal consulting activity to support their work teams and clinically oriented PITs. Internal specialists in quality management have additional education in quality monitoring and statistical issues and often continuous improvement systems such as Lean. Healthcare quality management professionals may complete special training and pass an examination sponsored by the National Associate for Healthcare Quality to be designed a certified professional in healthcare quality, infectious preventionists are generally nurses or other clinicians with advanced education in epidemiology and microbiology that may be certified by Association for Professionals in Infection Control and Epidemiology and earn a certification in infection prevention and control. Physicians are certified by Infectious Diseases and Society of America through American Board of Internal Medicine. Similarly, risk management professionals may earn certification sponsored by the American Society for Healthcare Risk Management. Specialists, their staffs are truly consultants. They do not have the authority over accountability units. Such authority is known as to erode the empowerment of clinical teams. Exhibit 5.6 shows a possible organization of service lines supported by several centralized functional services and an internal consulting unit. Reality is far more dynamic than the exhibit depicts. The exhibit's framework provides a mechanism for setting improvement goals, achieving the collaboration those goals require, and resolving issues arising in the implementation. Interprofessional conflicts. Clinical professionals are recognized in a formal process of certification, licensure, or registration. Several hundred professional certifications exist in healthcare, more than 100 in medicine alone. The process typically requires both classroom experiential education as well as continuing education to maintain competencies. Care teams often include several professionals with different certifications. Dispute over professional rights are common, especially when types of care providers compete over the same pool of fees. Professional standards are justified as protecting the consumer by establishing knowledge and skill requirements. It is important to understand that this also creates economic monopolies that increase the profession's income and the customer's cost of care. Thus, the question of professional domain, what requirements are necessary for a given task, is one on which customers, stakeholders have a profound interest. One role of the HCO leadership is to exercise the interest wisely using guidelines, protocols, and IPOCs, creating many opportunities to substitute less expensive non-professional for professionals. Most applicable law makes this acceptable as long as professional supervision is available. Part of the design of guidelines and protocols should establish the clinically necessary level of training for each task. The evidence-based rules of medicine and management are the correct drivers. Tasks should be completed by the lowest level of skills required to do them safely. When a higher skill is necessary, the HCO should supply it. The need can arise collectively from published concerns, individually from a care provider's assessment of a patient's need. These substitutions often create potential income losses for more highly paid professionals. Well-managed organizations must be sensitive to income concerns, but must also press forward in sound solutions. The criterion must be evidence and safety and effectiveness. The disputants must leave the debate thinking that they are fairly treated. Situations in which one group of stakeholders uses its economic power to stymie progress for all must be avoided. Measures. Scorecards for clinical services. Exhibit 5.7 shows an operational scorecard template for any service line. The operational scorecard can be applied to unit services such as specific primary care offices or inpatient unit for acute care services, often the specific outcomes and process measures. Electronic interfaces with the medical record allow for real-time daily monitoring of quality and safety indicators and trends to enable quick improvement of the situation. Other information in the data warehouse may be accessed on a regular basis in order to assess patient satisfaction and market response, associate engagement, and cost. When the service line is separately incorporated, financial performance should also be reported. Demand and output. Output, the use of services, is captured in accounting systems which generate detailed data on the kind of service or occasionally products such as a drug. Demand for care is often inferred from output, which can be measured directly from inpatient schedule and intake systems. Direct measurement permits identification of scheduling delays and lost cases. Valuable quality and marketing indicators. The epidemiologic planning constructs demand forecast from available community information. Forecast demands provides an average for market share. It can support detailed analysis for community sectors that may choose the HCO for specific services. It also useful in evaluating effectiveness. The model can construct expectation for major clinical events. These can be compared to actual demand to identify overuse or underuse. Quality assessment. Both outcome and measures and process quality measures have expanded substantially in recent years. The new measures often contain sophisticated adjustments to remove factors beyond the service's control. They have become practical as electronic record keeping has expanded. Outcomes quality measures are aggregated from groups of patients with similar diseases. Examining specific disease groups is often a key to improving patient management guidelines, but finer specification creates smaller counts. In general, specific measures should be available for smallest groups that are statistically meaningful, and statistical adjustments should be standardized to the population for aggregated data. The Joint Commission's National Patient Safety Goals promote specific improvements in patient safety, updated each year since 2003. The 2018 goals seek improvement for the following outcomes and process measures: accuracy of patient identification, communication among care providers, medication safety, harm associated with clinical alarm systems, healthcare associated infections, patient falls, healthcare associated pressure ulcers, the universal protocols for invasive diagnosis or treatment, conducting a pre-procedure verification process, marking the procedure site, and performing a timeout. In addition, the Joint Commission looks for evidence that the HCO encourages patients' active involvement in their own care as a safety strategy that explicitly identifies and addresses safety risk. Increasingly, quality rates and scores are publicly rated. The Leapfrog Group, for example, publishes a hospital safety grade. The Hospital Quality Forums published its field guide, cataloging several hundred outcomes and process measures with information on users and sources of benchmarks. Why Not the Best publishes a wide range of hospital-specific values drawn mainly for the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS for short. Medicare data. CMS itself publishes hospital quality rankings. These measures usually incorporate several service lines, more like the governing broad strategic scoreboard than the scoreboard of a unit or service line. They are useful in benchmarking and goal setting. Quality statistics must be carefully analyzed. Extensive specification adjustments are necessary to make apples-to-apples comparisons, adjusting for factors in which the patient populations are beyond the unit's control. Size and sensitivity can be a problem. A small emergency department with 250 heart attacks admissions per year might have only 3 deaths per month. Adjustment and survival risks for risk factors such as comorbid conditions, obesity, comorbid conditions, obesity, and or smoking could be appropriate. But with such a small number, each case could be reviewed to identify OFIs. Process measures are useful supplements to outcome statistics. They cover completion of steps such as administration of aspirin and oxygen, percentage of patients meeting timelines, delays for patients failing to meet timelines, and other process failures. The expectation would be compliance approach 100%, and the individual failures could be investigated for correctable causes. Process measures will be sensitive where the outcomes are not, but it is important to select processes that are important and scientifically justified. Structural measures of quality, basically counts of availability and appropriate resources, are now rarely useful for quality assessment. Alrighty, so let's take a quick break. I'm going to adjust my desk so I can sit down, and let's check how many more pages we got. sweet. Only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more pages. Or maybe not even. So like about 3.5? Sweet. Patient satisfaction and associate engagement. Satisfaction data are now collected by contract with companies specializing in patient discharge surveys. Reliable information requires careful monitoring of the sample, rigorous standardized question design, deliberate efforts to improve response rates, statistical analysis, and benchmarking. Patient satisfaction data now include hospital consumer assessment of healthcare providers and systems, HCHPS measures a patient perception of quality of care as a condition of Medicare participation, with specific questions to address larger function services such as nursing, rehabilitation, therapies. The HCHPS questions, available at www.hcahpsonline.org, identify several specific elements of the patient experience that are controlled by the organization, such as pain management and explanation of pharmaceuticals. The questions must be incorporated in commercial patient satisfaction surveys and public reporting and required posted on the government and other websites. Respondents are identified by disease group, allowing easy tallying for accountable teams. Clinical associates are also formally surveyed. Their engagement, measured directly by survey and indirectly by turnover and absenteeism, is closely linked to high outcome performance, retention, and return on training investments. Physicians are generally associated with service lines. Their response is an important source of marketing and quality insight. It is common to supplement surveys with focus groups and rounding to outstanding OFIs. Value-based purchasing. The hospital value-based purchasing program is a CMS initiative that rewards acute care hospitals and incentive payments for quality care provided to Medicare beneficiaries. Section 1886 of the Social Security Act established to the hospital VBN program effective payment for inpatient stays more than 300 hospitals across the United States. The program is part of the CMS's larger quality strategy to reform and new healthcare is delivered and financed. CMS-based hospital performance on an approved set of measures and dimensions grouped into specific quality domains: safety, clinical care, efficient cost reduction, and patient satisfaction. Domains are assigned weights, which are then used to score each domain. Hospitals receive their either financial rewards or penalties, depending on the score of the outcomes in each domain. According to the articles that examined financial incentives intended to improve in the provision of value-based healthcare, there were no differences between the United States and other countries, between schemes and targeted hospitals or primary care, or between schemes combining pay for performance with rewards for reducing costs and schemes using pay for performance alone. Paying for performance is less likely to be effective. Allowing payments to be used for specific purposes such as quality improvement had a higher likelihood of a positive effect compared with using funding for physician income. The size of incentive payment relative to revenue was not associated with the proportion of positive outcomes. Despite this discouraging start, it is likely that issuer the buyer pressure for quality and improvement will continue. Managerial leadership. The issue that trap hospitals in mediocrity are failures in their transformational and evidence-based management processes over recent decades. Evidence-based management has made substantial gains. Some systems based on guidelines, protocols, performance and measures, and continuous improvement have become the standard of practice. When the measures reveal OFI's leadership must focus on 3 issues. Use the IPOC guidelines and protocols, sustain a culture of teamwork and respect, in supporting the system of continuous improvement, sustaining the platform of IPOCs, guidelines, and protocols. Serious illness requires not just teams, but teams of teams. Many of the care providers serving the same patient never meet one another. They are in different locations on different shifts. Coordination within and between teams become critical. Breakdowns are most common not in the activities of a single care provider, but in the handoff from one care provider to another, or one team to another. Lost information causes a task to be done incorrectly, delayed, or left undone. Communication is key. Systems such as guidelines, protocols, electronic records facilitate effective communication. Guidelines, however, are not simple. They are not transferred mechanically to the IPOC. Rather, care teams consider how each step is appropriate to the specific patient. Protocols are similarly complex. Easy reference to an electronic copy becomes powerful support to ensure that every step is correctly completed. Electronic records clearly and succinctly summarizes needs, accomplishes, and next steps. It provides the data of many performance measures. As clinical teams realize these assets, their expectations for instantaneous web-based service grows. These systems build confidence and encourages communication among teammates. Leadership actions sustain the platform of the IPOC includes the following. 1. Ensuring round-the-clock staff access to every IPOC guideline and protocol. This responsibility becomes a core assignment for the information technology. Though it is no longer a technical challenge, leaders should make sure the assignment is clear, understood by IT staff, and measured on IT scoreboards. Often, visual management boards are used to display progress. 2. Comprehensive training so that every care provider is effective and comfortable in carrying out the activities of his assignment. 3. Answering care providers' questions and responding to OFIs about the layout. Indexing and validity of the IPOC guidelines. Leadership makes sure that all questions are answered, seeking knowledgeable experts as needed. It supports the OFIs as part of the continuous improvement process. Questions about the guidelines can be referred to the appropriate clinical service line for frequent diagnosis. The HCOs can form a PIT and develop a consensus version. Sustaining a culture of teamwork respects as they pursue excellence by addressing OFIs. Leaderships must foster the culture of teamwork and respect necessary for the fulfillment of the HCO's mission, vision, and values. Training as well as communication between leadership and associates will be substantially more effective in successful transformational culture. Leaders should support that culture by effective response to associate concerns. That begins with ongoing training for the first line team leaders and managers. In addition, rounding allows associates to pursue questions with higher ranking leaders, which allows leaders to monitor first line effectiveness. All associates are assured that the HCO's values are upheld, providing them with safe and comfortable work environment. Any evidence of violation is pursued promptly, as outlined in the section of Chapter 2 titled Correction. The following are 3 common concerns about direct care providers and clinical support teams with the appropriate leadership responses. I am concerned about an element of this guideline. Leaders should describe the origins and development of the guideline or protocol, making it clear that the guideline or protocol has been studied by the qualified professionals and represents a consensus of the best practice. Leaders should cite any available evidence about the protocol's overall outcomes, such as changes in the measures of quality or patient satisfaction. They may ask a qualified specialist to explain clinical details. They may accept the associate's concern as an OFI leading to PIT revision, but this is my professional right. Associates and one professional may claim the right to certain treatments or activities. Nurse anesthetics working during a specific surgical procedure rather than anesthesiologist. Midwives using forceps to speed vaginal delivery. Licensed practical nurses administration only certain classes of medication. These disputes are resolved by identifying the standard of practice. If evidence exists in published literature or is documented site visit to a comparable HCO, the professional can complete the activity. A PIT comprising representatives from all professional involved plus legal counsel can review the assembled evidence and make the recommendation to the senior leadership or governing board. My supervisor is ordering me around. Leaders should attempt to document the specific actions, retrain, and the associates involved. Coaching or transformational leadership is often appropriate. Correction may be called for refraining. Retraining fails and the behavior is sufficient and objectable. Maintaining continuous clinical improvement. The record of clinical failure in American HCOs shows quite clearly that the path to excellence is not easy. All HCOs can improve. Baldrige winners are typically scored in the 600s out of 1,000 possible points improvement on ongoing reality for every HCO. It is always incremental. No one leaps to excellence in single bound. The leadership of an HCO plays a major role in path towards excellence. Leaderships that maintains continuous clinical improvement supports the identification and systematic pursuit of OFIs. Doing so requires attention to knowledge management, statistical expertise, solid process of negotiating goals, training and rewards. Baldrige recipients and other committed to excellence have shown their progress can be made incrementally. Earlier steps build resources for later, larger ones. Managers evaluate the performance of associates and frontline team leaders for their understandings of continuous clinical improvement and their ability to teach each other's quality improvement. People who excel in these areas should be promoted. A key factor in continuous improvement is leadership consistency. Senior leadership cannot falter. Goals can be realistic. It is far better to achieve a modest goal than to fail an overly ambitious one. I need to hear that. Associates' concern must be consistently answered to the asker's satisfaction. Such responses often involve saying, "I don't know, but I'll find out." And occasionally you might have a good point, and I can't find any evidence. High performance HCOs understand both why financial success is important and how it can be obtained. Care that meets the National Academy of Medicine goals is inherently less costly than care that falls short. Leaders' approach to the annual goal-setting cycle begins with asking themselves, what clinical improvement can we make to bolster profits? The questions is radically different from what do we cut costs to balance the books? Practice applications. The questions are about applying the chapter content. It is often helpful to discuss them with classmates or mentors, gaining different perspectives on the issue. Here are 4 questions, often raised by patients, health insurance stakeholders, and care providers. What are the answers HCO leaders should convey? How do I know care here is any good? Why are 6 dimensions? Care that is safe, effective, patient-centered, timely, efficient, and equitable are excellence necessary. How well does the HCO achieve high reliability and culture of safety? Why is it important that the patients... Oh, this is practical application. Okay, we're done. Woo! Done with chapter 5. And that's all the readings for today. We'll see you guys for the next part of the book. See you then. Bye. Take care.